Our next presentation this afternoon is from Kin Mining, and it's very pleased to welcome Andrew Monkton to the stage. Kin has been one of the strongest performing junior gold stocks this year, and it's been doing that because it's been generating some exceptional exploration results from its flagship Cardinia gold project near Leonora here in WA. The current drilling program, which is aimed at growing the existing 945,000 ounce resource, is already well advanced. It's already generated some spectacular results, including several new discoveries, and we're expecting significant news flow from that drilling over the coming weeks and months. So to tell you more about it, could you please welcome Andrew Monkton?
Thanks, Nicholas, and thank you for the welcome. There's going to be two thematics in the presentation today. The first one being what we see geologically and technically in the Cardinia gold project, and why we think that we're onto something very special there. And the second is going to be what we believe is a major change in this Leonora area for not only exploration, driven by the recent boom, but also the corporate activity that is ongoing. I'm going to flick through some of these slides reasonably quickly, but I'll try and hit the highlights associated with 3 or 4 of the slides. So our land package there, you'll see central to Leonora. Within 100 kilometres there are 3 Tier 1 deposits at Thunderbox, Wallaby and Gwalia. There's another 2 Tier 2 deposits, Mount Morgans and King of the Hills, both of which exceed 3 million ounces. And there are a host of other smaller deposits, everything from 100,000 ounces through to close to 1 million ounces. The main players in that area being NTM, Genesis, obviously the 3 producers, Thunderbox, Gwalia and Goldfields at Wallaby, also Dacian at Mount Morgans. But there's been a very significant exploration push in this area in this last 12 to 18 months. Ourselves with 45,000 metres, but you will have heard from some of the other presenters today and yesterday, pushing towards 250,000 metres of drilling has gone on in this area in this last 18 months or so. So lots of excitement, lots of transactions going on in this part of the world, and being an explorer with a significant resource base is becoming a rarer and rarer thing in this little part of the world. Corporately, we're about a $150 million company, 700 million shares on issue, and the shareholder base is dominated by high net worths. So the 4 largest shareholders of the company own 52% of the stock, but we have quite a reasonable blend of retail shareholders, and so we trade circa 1 to 1.2 million shares per day on average. So there's an opportunity for smaller retail investors to be in and out if that's their desire to do so. My preference would be that they are long-term shareholders, but there is sufficient liquidity in Kin, albeit that 4 or 5 major shareholders dominate the register. And the other thing I'd like to point out on this slide is the 12-month share price performance. While 2 of the presenters in the previous session who had the best discoveries in Western Australia in a long time in De Grey and Chalice have gone up somewhere between 15 and 20 times on their share price in this last 12 months. Kin's been a bit of a quiet achiever, and we're up 6 times their share price in this last 12 months. So shareholders who have been long-term supporters have been well rewarded, and I wish them every success. As you would expect for an exploration company, we're technically and geologically strong, but we also have some engineering and consulting groups that are engineering strong and metallurgically strong. So a good blend for us. Why do we want to be in this part of the world? The large striped piece of magnetics on the bottom left-hand corner of that slide is a crustal depth structure called the Keith Kilkenny Shear Zone. And all those major deposits that I showed you on that very first slide lie within 10 or 15 kilometres of these major crustal depth faults. So ours is the Keith Kilkenny Shear Zone. There's another one further to the east of us called the Celia Fault. And then there's the Laverton Tectonic Zone and the Tectonic Zone that runs up through Leonora to Thunderbox. So being adjacent to those major structures is the key to finding these multi-million ounce deposits. We also have some second order structures in here, the Mertondale Shear Zone that the Mertondale deposits all sit on, and I'll touch more on the Cardinia fault, or a series of faults that run through that Cardinia area in the centre of the slide. This is a snapshot of Cardinia itself. Scale's good to appreciate here, so we're looking at an area of that slide that's about 9 kilometres high and about 6 kilometres wide. This area has had a long history of relatively shallow exploration, so the western side of that with its 4,000 or 5,000 drill holes, many of which are particularly shallow, less than 30 metres. So that Bruno Lewis deposit, which is the sort of the pink and the magenta series of drill holes there, has been the focus for at least 2 decades. And our view was that the eastern side of the tenements, where Cardinia Hill and Helens and Black Chief and Hobby and East Lynne all sit, is at least as prospective, if not more prospective, than the western side. So that's really been the change in the mindset of kin to go and explore some of this outlying and slightly further afield. And when I say slightly further afield, we're still within 5 kilometres of the processing plant site, so we're not going very far away. And we've assessed that whole eastern side in 3 phases this year. Large soil geochemistry, and the process that we've gone through is really just the standard exploration process. So we're not reinventing the wheel here, we're not doing anything particularly innovative, but good, disciplined, systematic exploration has its benefits, and that's what we've been applying to this. So the whole eastern side was covered by soil geochemistry. It showed up a number of large soil geochemical anomalies. We've done some broad-spaced Aircore drilling from Hobby in the north all the way to Helens South in the south, a distance of about 8 kilometres of strike length. And the early hits that we got in that have been advanced to resource drill outs at Cardinia Hill, at Hobby, and we've done some other work in some of those other prospects that are named on the slide. Just to reiterate, the geophysics that we did earlier this year, and the geophysics that I'm about to show you are also part of a major story here. So keep an eye on the geophysical progress that we make this year, because I think that'll be one of the keys to unlocking the value that sits in this whole project area. Some of the we have a 945,000 ounce resource base. That will be upgraded in the December quarter by changes to the gold price, up to $2,600 from the previous $2,000 estimate, and we'll be adding Cardinia Hill and Hobby as new mineral resources to that inventory. The Bruno Lewis and Lewis East mineral resource upgrades will probably have to wait until all the assays are returned, and we're still drilling there at the moment, so I'm not expecting all the assays from that to be returned in time to make the December update, but they'll be done in early, probably the March quarter 21. Take away from this, Cardinia spans something like 8 kilometres by 4 kilometres, so it's a major mineralised system. I've no doubt about that whatsoever. Cardinia Hill's an illustration of what we've found with some the exploration process that we've adopted. It was originally a single line of Aircore, 7 metres at 6, in a single drill hole that was drilled in 2015. We've done 3 phases of work on this over the last 7 or 8 months. 67 RC holes now and 9 diamond holes, 40 by 40 pattern. This was the standout section, 21 metres at 6.6 we announced earlier this week. Deepest hole in the project's down only 150 metres, and that's got 5.5 metres at 6.2 grams gold. Geologically, it's... and before I go on with the geology, so there's a host of other intersections in this, ranging between 6 and 17 metres typically, averages about 10, and they range in grade from 1.5 through to 4.5 grams, and they average somewhere between 2.5 and 3 grams. It's mineralised over 700 metres strike length, and as I mentioned, we'll do the resource estimate in the December quarter. Geologically, from right-hand side to left-hand side, there's a felsic volcanic unit. The Cardinia Hill deposit sits in a dolerite sill, differentiated dolerite sill, and for those with a geological background, you'll recognise the significance of that. Intruded by porphyries, and you can see the distribution of the gold in a vertical shear zone, which is the main zone, and then also surrounding the porphyry intrusion that sits there. To the left-hand side, mafic volcanics and sedimentary sequence. In plan view, and this is the new gravity survey that we've just completed on the Cardinia Hill area, the large blue area is the felsic volcanic, the large red area in the southwest corner is the mafic rock, and the shear zone follows the contact between those two gravity anomalies. And the smaller blue outlines in the top left-hand corner of the slide are these porphyry intrusions. So the key to where the high grade is on this whole Cardinia fault is finding that contact between the low and high gravity materials and where these felsic volcanic intrusions, felsic porphyry intrusions, dilate the whole shear zone. Now this shear zone in magnetics, we can trace this shear zone for 5 or 6 kilometres now, but we're hoping that the expanded gravity work that Haynes Gravity are doing for us as we speak will show us just how extensive that Cardinia Hill fault is, as well as some of the other faults that lie to the east and to the west of this. So this is somewhat of a change for our interpretation on Cardinia Hill, and we are expecting this to expand. I'm not expecting that this single Cardinia Hill deposit is going to be the only deposit along this Cardinia Hill fault. It's a very significant fault, big alteration system, so it's really opened our eyes a little bit to the other kinds of things that we're seeing in this whole project. An illustration of where Cardinia Hill lies, that slide's about 1.5 kilometres by 1.5 kilometres. So we have this Helens resource and the Fiona resources on the left-hand side in the upper part, and we've had other basic Aircore lines that have delivered us some good results, followed those up with some RC drilling that's hit some reasonable mineralisation, 21 at 3.5, but also some things that were a little surprising, perhaps even a little disappointing, 2 metres at 2.65 in underneath some of these Aircore lines. But I'm hoping and I believe that the gravity survey will help to unravel this significantly over this next 6 months or so. The other part of the project that we've been doing a lot of work on is a project called East Lynne. So East Lynne lies to the northeast of the project. It was a virgin discovery, albeit that the old-timers had dug some near-surface gold from along its trend, and Kin had drilled a few individual RC holes underneath the old workings, and has to be said, had some reasonable success with 5 metres at 126 from surface in one drill hole. But we liked it from the fact that it looked extensive in the soil geochemistry to us. We've done 400 and 200 metre Aircore lines across it, come up with some very consistent numbers, which is one of the features that I like most about it, is the consistency of hitting the mineralisation. It's had some spectacular results in it, 5 at 35 being a standout. It's more usually somewhere between 4 and 24 metres at somewhere between 1 gram and 2.5 grams in the oxide zone. We also discovered another trend, Collymore, in that same program. Similar kinds of numbers as you see at more generally East Lynne, 4 to 20 metres at somewhere between 1.5 and 3 grams. We're taking a cautious and judicious approach to East Lynne. We've drilled 12 RC holes. Those holes have hit what we expected to hit geologically, so we're eagerly awaiting what those RC holes will tell us in assay. And we've drilled 2 diamond holes to the very northern end of the East Lynne line, that line 2 that you see on the slide. East Lynne also has a significant geophysical anomaly called an IP anomaly associated with it. It's the contact, it's a major geological contact in the whole sequence. We had some limited success here with the Aircore. We didn't find any gold associated with the target itself, but the base of the Aircore holes gave us anomalism in silver and tellurium and arsenic and copper and a whole raft of other minerals. And so we drilled a couple of diamond holes into the underlying geophysical anomaly. We got 1 metre at 20 and 2 metres at 1, which was okay without being spectacular. But the geology looks like this. So this is the core. It's a big pyrite-rich zone, so it has all the ingredients of all the mineralisation that we see at Cardinia Hill and Helens and Bruno Lewis. Sometimes it's this banded pyrite in the top piece of core, sometimes it's this blebby, coarse pyrite that you see in the lower core, but it certainly has all the geological ingredients that we like to see associated with one of these large mineralised systems. Porphyry intrusions, quartz carbonate veins, so it's lighting up the eyes of the geologists that are drilling this stuff. I particularly like where the Cardinia Hill fault, the Helens fault, the Lewis fault, and there are other faults, intersect this East Lynne and intersect this Collymore horizon, because I think that's where the high-grade mineralisation will be associated with this. So what does the whole project look like now? So East Lynne looks like the base of the project mineralisation to us. East Lynne's 3.5 k's long. The Collymore zone, which goes from Hobby all the way down to Rangoon, is longer than that again. So that's 4 or 5 kilometres long. And then you have these faults coming up through Cardinia Hill and Helens and Black Chief and Comedy King and Bruno Lewis, that my expectation is that those faults are a series of these faults associated with the major Cardinia mineralisation, and that whole area is going to reveal numerous deposits, some of which will be Cardinia Hill size, some of which will be Bruno Lewis size, but we're very focused on finding the multi-million ounce deposit that I believe sits in there. In looking for the multi-million ounce deposit, we will find some of these smaller high-grade things as we go through, and we'll drill them out to resources, and then we'll park them while we continue to look for the major deposit. I expect that we are still in the very early stages of exploration here. Despite having 945,000 ounces, we're still learning what's going on in this whole system. So my expectation is that this is a gold camp. It's not just a series of small deposits. If Cardinia doesn't float your boat, we have several other projects of similar size, similar prospectivity associated with these major crustal depth faults. Iron King is an example of one. We've given the same approach as we've taken at Cardinia to Iron King. Iron King sits 40 kilometres, 45 k's north of Leonora, close by a number of producers. It had high-grade gold production in the old-timers' days. We've done the soil geochemistry over it. There's 3 or 4 areas that we have now done 18,000 metres of Aircore. The Aircore drilling was completed yesterday, so the Aircore rig is demobilising. The diamond rig and the RC rig are remaining at the Cardinia project until mid-December. If successful in the first round of Aircore at 400 metre, we'll infill this to 200 and go with some RC drilling in the new year. Iron King's not the only one of these. There are a number of them up and down the tenement holding that we haven't got to yet. We've been at this for a little over 12 months now. So the takeaways, I think Kin's onto a major mineralised system here. We're going to be exploring for a considerable period of time here. We have a background and a penchant for development, but it'll only be development at the appropriate time. I've guided the market and said we need to get to 1.5 to 2 million ounces before we reconsider the feasibility study, and there's no guarantee that we'll make a decision to mine at that point in time. It'll depend on the results that we get over this next period of time, approaching 12 months. But the things that we've been turning up at East Lynne and Collymore give me great encouragement that we are onto something serious here, and we have the shareholders and the backing and the board and management to take it and yield the maximum value we can for the shareholder base. Happy to take some questions, Nicholas. Thank you.
Thanks, Andrew. Just two quick ones. Firstly, can you give us some more colour around the exact timing of that resource update? I think you said December quarter, is that right?
Yes, December quarter. And Nicholas, this must be the question that I get asked more often than any other question I ever get asked. You know, the hot copper fraternity are red hot on this. When's the resource coming out? We're working on the basis of releasing it sometime mid to early December.
Excellent. And secondly, of the prospects that you've been drilling, which do you consider to have the best potential to move the dial in terms of growing that resource?
I think it's going to be a combination of Collymore, East Lynne, Cardinia and Helens area. I'm really red hot on these north-south faults that the guys are finding in this gravity survey, and where they hit these big stratigraphic positions is where I'm hoping that we're going to find something very spectacular.
Fantastic. And finally, further news on East Lynne? When are you expecting some results back?
2 to 3 weeks.
2 to 3 weeks.
You know, we've got 10,000 samples in the assay lab at the moment, so it's taking its time to get through.
Right. Thanks very much.
Pleasure.
Please thank Andrew Monckton.